I recently saw this TV show called Alternate History, where they took the most implausible situation possible and made it happen through no basis of theory or actuality, and then at the end asked us what we thought. I decided to take this in a different direction. So I present to you what I'm calling Hypothetical History and Moral Quandaries, the Theory of What If. Number 1. JFK is never assassinated and goes on to win a second term, once again beating out Nixon, who now distraught with depression quits politics and becomes a carpet salesman. With JFK alive, the U.S. never enters Vietnam and thousands of lives are saved. However, because of this, Khrushchev now thinks JFK is weak and turns the emerging Cold War into an actual war, which lasts the rest of JFK's term and is an utter disaster. Lyndon Johnson, then elected president in '68, drops the bomb on Moscow. This ends the war, and Johnson is heralded as the greatest president of the modern era. JFK lives on remembered, much like Jimmy Carter, and his family is never the same. Bobby Kennedy, who is also never assassinated, actually runs against Johnson in '72 but loses badly and stays in the Senate for several years before retiring as a lame duck politician. Even though Nixon now gives the White House free carpeting, would you still want Lee Harvey Oswald to succeed? Sub-question, does Ted Kennedy still kill a prostitute? Number 2. If Kurt Cobain never kills himself by marrying Courtney Love, does he keep... Sorry. Don't fucking pretend like it's not true. Does he keep releasing Nirvana records that continue the decline they were already on? Or, sensing Cobain's self-destruction, does Dave Grohl still leave to start the Foo Fighters, forcing Cobain to go into hiding, promising to one day release his epic comeback record, Japanese Communism, which will suffer poor sales and only be appreciated by those who thought Incesticide was the definitive Nirvana record? Number 3. If River Phoenix never dies of an overdose, who plays the Emperor in Gladiator? Number 4. Number 4. God decides not to rest on the 7th day. What does he do instead? Number 5. We all know that John Adams voted for the bald eagle as the official mascot of the United States, and Benjamin Franklin voted for the turkey. But what bird would John Hancock have picked? Sub-question, how many people voted for Thomas Jefferson's idea of Ben Franklin dressed up in a turkey costume? Number 6. If Hitler became a famous painter, but also assumingly still does the majority of the terrible things he did, does Schindler's List still win an Oscar? Gotta use it. Number 7. You have just fallen in love with the most attractive person you have ever seen in real life. Their personality is exactly what you want and could not be any more appealing to you physically or mentally. You say things in public like, "They're the light of my world," and "they saved my life," and you're serious. However, this person has one glaring flaw. They think that Emilio Estevez is the greatest actor in the world, and there is no way to convince them otherwise. To them, Estevez is Brando. Conversely, they also believe that Kiefer Sutherland is the worst actor in the world. You guys playfully fight about this all the time, but secretly it bothers you both more than you can admit. The final straw comes when you're watching Young Guns after dinner. And they claim that Estevez carried the film, while you try to convince them that it's actually Kiefer's emotional internal conflict that drives the true intent of the story, and then they storm out. The next day, you get dumped. A week later, you find yourself drinking and crying while watching the Mighty Ducks on TBS. This makes you decide to call your ex and tell them how you feel. They don't pick up. What do you say on their voicemail? Number 8. Early in their careers, Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor decide to switch paths. Cosby becomes the foul-mouthed, drug-addicted genius, and Pryor develops more family-friendly entertainment, but is also heralded as a genius. They still both have fantastically huge careers and enjoy mass success. But would you be comfortable with Richard Pryor being the spokesman for Jell-O Pudding Pops? Sub-question, is The Cosby Show now set in Harlem? Sub-question, who is more flammable? Number 9. You are an up-and-coming actor in Los Angeles, and everything seems to be going your way. You are very passionate about your craft and are well respected for your ability. The trades are all saying you're the most exciting young talent that has come along since Shia LaBeouf. You have 3 pretty good independent films under your belt and a few guest appearances on shows like Weeds and Mad Men. Your agent calls and tells you that you have 2 amazing movie offers. One is another great independent film starring Maggie Gyllenhaal and Peter Sarsgaard. It's a film written by Christopher Nolan about a man who falls in love with a narcoleptic woman, and it will be called She Slept With Me All Day. It will be a surefire indie cult hit, but will undoubtedly make little money and keep your paycheck status small. However, your acting status will skyrocket and your peers and critics will call you the next De Niro. The other film is a new Jerry Bruckheimer film about drag racing called The Last Drag. You will play the lead, Rain Rockinson, alongside your love interest played by Lindsay Lohan. The film will undoubtedly do extremely well at the box office, raise your star image and your paycheck per film, but it will in all likelihood drop your acting status down in the toilet like Nicolas Cage or Ryan Phillippe. Your agent tells you there's no way you can do both, so you have to decide on one. What movie do you do and why? Shut the fuck up. Number 10. Number 10. Last one. Here we go. Richie Valens and Buddy Holly are still in a plane crash, but they don't die. However, Buddy Holly's hand is completely destroyed and is no longer able to play guitar. Valens, who comes out virtually injury-free, begins to make some of the best music of his career. Buddy Holly decides to focus on singing, moves to California, meets a struggling musician named Brian Wilson, and they form a new group called Buddy Holly and the Beach Boys. Meanwhile, Valens, who at this point is considered by critics to be the musical voice of his generation, can't seem to find mainstream success and travels to England to find commercial success. Back in California, Buddy Holly and the Beach Boys begin to release some of the most commercially successful music of the decade. Seeing Holly's success, Valens convinces a band he's been writing music with called the Beatles to come to America. However, because of Valens' influence, the Beatles never stole their music from black people, they stole it from Latin people. This makes their music a lot less commercially successful, and when they enter the States, there is little excitement. Although critics and music snobs consider the work Valens and the Beatles are doing as maybe the greatest music of all time, Buddy Holly and the Beach Boys sell out stadiums across the globe with lesser but more poppy rock and roll. Holly and his crew are jealous of Valens and the Beatles' critical acclaim, which still fuels the friendly rivalry between the Beach Boys and the Beatles. However, Buddy Holly, frustrated because if his hand had never been destroyed, he honestly believes he would have been the better songwriter than Valens, says in an interview that he wished Valens' hand would have been mangled in that crash. This changes the friendly rivalry into an intense hatred between the two, and they never speak again. For the next 20 years, the Beach Boys continue to be the biggest band in the world. Brian Wilson never goes crazy, by the way. And the Beatles continue to be the band that everyone who loves music idolizes, but now they just play clubs and they never had any records that went into number 1. The Beatles break up in 1985, and since they never become as publicly relevant, John Lennon never dies and decides to join Paul McCartney's new band, Wings, who starts writing simpler music that the Beach Boys were so successful at. However, it's too late for Wings, and the guys fall off the map of music, and they continue to play casinos and county fairs to this day. Meanwhile, Ringo, who quit music after the breakup, dies in a boating accident in 1993 after becoming the mayor of San Francisco. George Harrison continues playing with Richie Valens, and in 1987 they start a supergroup called the Traveling Wilburys. Tom Petty and Roy Orbison never joined this band due to their close friendship with Buddy Holly and are replaced by Michael McDonald and Pete Townsend, making the Traveling Wilburys epically unsuccessful. Meanwhile, in 1989, Holly, burdened by his rival's musical accolades, becomes a very heavy drinker. He gets into a bar fight in Vegas after hanging out at a Wings show and gets stabbed and dies. The rest of the Beach Boys continue to play and sell out stadiums to this day. So knowing all this, would you still want them to die in a plane crash? Sub-question, what happens to the Big Bopper? Sub-question, do these hypothetical events make Carlos Santana irrelevant? Thank you.
Give it up for Dallas McLaughlin.